Hi everyone, I'm Patrick. I'm the maker of Busywork. So Busywork is a backend as a service that allows you to build beyond the basics of just database queries and allows you to make entire workflows that fit what your app has to do. Today I want to show you how to build a two-step sign-up flow with text message confirmation using Busywork and Twilio. I've linked all the resources that you need in the description below. First, you need to sign up at Busywork. It has a free plan that comes with all the features that we need for this tutorial. I'm using a simple front end for this example, just something that can consume the backend services that we're going to create. You can integrate it into any front end you like. I'm using Angular for this example. Now I want to create the backend function that first signs up the user, generates a random activation code, sends the activation code to the user using a text message. Now we just open the workflow editor by clicking the function that we just created. Now we are inside the workflow builder. In here we can create more or less complex workflows combining the backend services that Busywork provides. First, we need to create a new table for saving the user credentials and possibly other information as well. Click the New Table button and give the table a name. I'll just call it App Users. And now on to building the actual workflow. So this block is the entry point of our backend function. Here we define the data that we expect the function to receive. We simply define the data using JSON and the system infers the schema automatically. For this function we need at least a username, a password, and the user's phone number. In JSON we can define it like this. If we click the green plus button we can see all of the building blocks and we can pick the blocks that we need. So in this case we need the sign up block which will allow us to sign up the user. Next we need to set up the sign up block. Just hover the block and click the gear icon. The block needs to know which table to use for storing credentials, what field in the request to use as a username, and what field to use as the password. And then optionally we can return an access token if we want to. This block can actually fail in signing up a user, in the case where a username is already taken, for instance. We need to check if a user has actually been signed up before sending an activation code. I've added an if-else block where we are going to check if the signed up evaluates to true. In that case, we know that the user has actually been signed up. The next steps involve generating an activation code, sending the code using Twilio, save the code to the user's table, and finally to return a response to the user. We have to use the activation both when sending the SMS using Twilio and when saving it to the database. Now inside the constant block I'm actually allowed to use a special inline function called randint, which will generate our activation code. Now we are ready to send the text message using Twilio. So we just need to add the Twilio block to our workflow and connect it. So from your Twilio account you need to copy and paste your account SID, auth token, and also your sender phone number. So we pick the send a simple SMS action. Now we can map the user's phone number from the request to this field. Then we paste the sender phone number from our Twilio account, and then we simply write the message that we want to send the user. So in this case I'm going to say this is your activation code, and then I can actually insert the activation code into the message. Last thing that we want to do is to save the activation code to the table that we just created. So we just use the database update block, connect it from the Twilio block, and then we open the configuration. So I simply select the app users table. I specify that we want to change this field, so the field called activation code, and we want to set a value, and the value would be the value of the constant block, so the activation code that we've generated. I don't want to target all users in the database, so I need to create a condition for this update. So I pick the ID and then check if the ID is equal to the one of the newly created user. Final thing for us to do is to actually return something from the function. So I pick this response block and connect it in the workflow. Then I can again just open up the settings and then configure a status message. In this case it would be success. We want to pass some data. We are going to use the user ID when we are activating. So I will pass that back to the user. Just write some message that the user has been registered and that the activation code has been sent. And then lastly, we define a status code for this response. Now I just add a response in the case where the user actually fails to sign up. So could be if the username is taken. So in this case, status would be failed, message would be could not sign up user, and then just some status code. Now the user is actually able to sign up using username, password, and phone number. The second step is to activate the user. Like before, we're starting off by creating a new function for this. For us to activate the user, we need to confirm the activation code and know which user is actually trying to activate. So the request will contain the user ID. That's the one that we returned from the first function. Next, we need the activation code. This is passed by the user. It's the code that the user will eventually receive as a text message. Now we actually have all the information that we need in order to look up the user. So I'm using the query block, where I'm selecting the app users table again, specifying find one, which means that we are only returning one object. Then I'm making a condition where I'm trying to match the ID with the one passed in the request. The result of the query will be a single user object. Now we want to check if the activation code matches the one that the user typed. So we insert an if-else block. So the target field is the activation code returned from the query. We want to check if it's equal to the activation code from the request. Finally, we want to set a field in the database indicating that the user has actually been activated and can now sign into the system. So I insert this database update block. I'm simply going to set a field activated to true for this user. And now I can create a condition so the update only applies to this specific user. And then finally, I'm just going to return two responses from this function. One for the successful outcome and one if anything fails. Now that my functions are ready and deployed, I can simply copy and paste them into the front end. Don't mind this is Angular, it applies to any framework that you're using. So now I can just fill out the form, username, password, and phone number, and then submit it. Now I received this text message. I input the activation code and submit it, and now my account is activated. That's it. I hope you learned what's possible to do with Busywork from watching this video. I have a lot more content coming, so please remember to subscribe. If you have any ideas, questions, or suggestions for what you would like to see, let me know in the comments. Everything I've talked about here is linked in the description. And the functions are available as clonables in Busywork. See you guys soon.